The American colonies declared independence from England and King George III.
They ratified the Articles of Confederation and defeated the British in the Revolutionary War.
The newly minted United States of America were at peace, but not all was wine and roses.
In this episode, we will discuss some of the challenges faced by the states under the Articles of Confederation and Perpetual Union. One of the biggest issues after the War for Independence was outstanding debts from the war.
France, the principal outside financier, had loaned the United States more than $2 million, and additional money was borrowed from private parties.
The Congress was having difficulty paying off the debt because the states weren't sending tax revenue as was agreed in the Articles of Confederation.
The states were supposed to collect taxes from property, a system Alexander Hamilton later said didn't work at all, and send them to Congress, which they failed to do.
This, of course, led to diplomatic issues with France and was embarrassing for the new Union.
In response, Congress decided to print more money to help pay down the debt, which led to hyperinflation and economic problems.
Another major issue was the money itself.
Under the Articles of Confederation, the states were still able to coin their own money.
Because each state had its own currency, the values of the currency would fluctuate and deflate rapidly, which led to more devaluation of the currency printed by Congress and made an already bad economic situation even worse.
The devaluation of currency made it difficult, if not impossible, for many citizens, especially farmers, to pay state taxes.
Many were veterans of the Revolution and had been paid very little, if anything at all, during the war.
A lot of them came home from the war to be welcomed by tax debts they couldn't pay, which made it difficult for the states to pay debts to European creditors and taxes to Congress.
As a result, some states decided to seize property in order to pay for the taxes.
As you can imagine, this did not sit well with many people, which led to protests and uprisings.
The most notable of these was Shays' Rebellion in Massachusetts from August 1786 to February 1787.
Named for Daniel Shays, a veteran of the Revolutionary War, who found himself in the very position of being unable to pay tax debt upon returning home from the war. He and other residents of West Massachusetts gathered together with other farmers to protest against those taxes, which led them to attempting to overthrow the government of Massachusetts.
Shays may or may not have been one of the actual leaders. He denied it, but he was the one for whom the rebellion was ultimately named.
The rebellion began with protests of the legislature and courts, and progressed to armed confrontations between the rebels in western Massachusetts and supporters of the government in the east.
In response, Samuel Adams, cousin of John Adams, helped to create the Riot Act in 1786.
The Massachusetts state legislature suspended habeas corpus, which allowed them to keep people in jail without trial.
Sam Adams also suggested that such rebellion should be punishable by death, which, if you think about it, is rather ironic.
The rebellion came to a climax when the Shayites, as they came to be known, unsuccessfully attacked the Springfield Armory.
The rebels were repelled, many were captured, and the leaders fled into New Hampshire and Vermont.
Ultimately, thousands of protesters signed confessions and were given amnesty, or were pardoned after being indicted, Shays himself being one of those pardoned.
Two men, John Bly and Charles Rose, were also accused of looting and were later hanged.
George Washington, who had already been an advocate for changing government under the Articles of Confederation, wrote in a letter to Henry Lee in October of 1786, "You talk my good sir, of employing influence to appease the present tumults in Massachusetts. I know not where that influence is to be found, or, if attainable, that it would be a proper remedy for the disorders. Influence is not government. Let us have government by which our lives, liberties, and properties will be secured, or let us know the worst at once.
Interestingly, in a letter to James Madison in January of 1787, Thomas Jefferson, who, serving as ambassador to France at the time, wrote that the occasional rebellion serves to preserve freedom. His famous quote, "The tree of liberty must be refreshed from time to time with the blood of patriots and tyrants," is from a letter to William Stephen Smith in November of that year, and was also inspired by these events.
Another problem was that the states were still individually negotiating for international trade with foreign countries.
This led to a very ununified system for trading, and also made it difficult to protect American trade ships, especially in international waters.
These were the major issues that led to the United States of America to form a more perfect union.
What they came up with was the United States Constitution.